So I think I am live now. Give the guys a couple of seconds to find me and for me to find myself here so I can see your questions. Okay. Okay. Oh, there I am. Excellent. Okay. Just give me a second so I can get my screen and hi, Lori. Hi, Tammy. Hi, Lynette. RJ, Bobby. Okay. Oh, there I am. Oh, hang on. Get this sound down. Get this sound down. Just give me a second so I can get my screen and sorry about that because we don't need the feedback. All right. Here we go. So this is the second time I've done a live. No, yes, this is the second time I've done live. So I'm still on a learning curve, but it's going to be just fine. So I just want to show you the 4 cards we're going to do just before we get started. I have already cut my mats, done my layering. Hi, Diane. And I'm just going to assemble them with you. I am going to put in the units. There isn't a unit for me yet, but when I'm done, I will create a unit. And in that unit, I will put a PDF that has these thank you words that I typed out, just because I thought not everybody has thank you stamps. So I often do this where I will actually just go to my computer and print out whatever it is I want to say. So that's what this is all about. So there'll be a PDF in the units that has my name on it with a description that says something about thank you cards, something like that. And then the other thing I'm going to put in the unit is, because I'm going to go through this with you, I thought it was best if I just typed up just some quick little instructions and just a little shout out that these cards we're making tonight, I didn't create all by myself. I went to Pinterest and I kind of looked at things there, and then I kind of, did my own thing. But it's not my original. So I just wanted to say that because, you got to give credit where credit is due. And in this case, I can't tell you exactly where I got them from because I looked at so many. So that's the other piece of it I wanted to share with you. And I guess the last thing is, the challenge here is to make these cards from your scraps. So I just finished a project for the design team, and I was given the Simple Stories, Simple Vintage Ancestry. Thank you, Debbie. So glad you liked them. And I had a bunch of scraps left over. And so my challenge for myself was, let's make these cards using those scraps. So that's where the idea came from for my cards. And I just point out a couple of things. So like this little butterfly, it came out of the bits and pieces, but everything else came from the paper scraps. I did use brown cardstock to mat mine because that's what seemed to flow for me. But you can use whatever colored cardstock, whatever scraps you've got, play with it. You'll be surprised what you can come up with. The other thing I'm just going to mention quickly, I did use 4 punches. So I used a 1 1/4 and a 1 1/2. They are both round. And then I used a 2-inch scalp and a 1 3/4 round. And if you don't have punches, make them square, make them a rectangle. You can, what I really am looking forward to is seeing the cards you guys make, because you're going to give me more ideas moving forward with this card making thing we're kind of on right now. So I'm just going to pick up my cards kind of in the order I'm going to make them, and we'll get started because I have a time crunch. I'm supposed to be done by 7 o'clock. I believe 7 o'clock Mountain Time. So here's the first card. I do like to use the 110-pound weight for my base, but you can use whatever you have on hand. And if you find your card is a little on the flimsy side, put some more layers down. Like you can put a layer in here where you're going to have your maybe your stamping or your words of wisdom, as I always call them, and that will help to firm up your card. So that's just a little trick that I've learned along my journey. So what we've got going on here, so let me pull the instructions back so I can see them, is you've got an A2 card, and then I made a mat, so cardstock mat. So that's this brown that measures 5 1/4 by 4. And then my piece of pattern paper I put on top measures 5 by 3 3/4. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my art glitter glue. I'm going to put some adhesive on the back of my mat. And then just center it top to bottom, side to side. Lay it down and give it a good burnish. So if you've got questions, I'll try and look up, just keeping in mind that there is a bit of a delay. And we're having a crazy windstorm here tonight. So I hope it's not going to impact my internet or anything else for that matter. So let me pull our card back over. So what I've put down so far is this layer here. So the butterflies and the flowers that was on the original. This time I used the piece of paper that had some clocks. And then for my layering mats, as I call them, I have this little strip, and the cardstock itself measures 1 1/4 by 5. And the pattern paper measures 4 by 5. And the trick here is when I'm doing my matting, I always make my pattern paper piece 1/4 inch smaller than my cardstock. Because especially for cards, I like to have a lot of, hi Fauna, thank you. I like to see more of my cardstock. I guess that's where I'm going with this. So we also need for this card, oh, you lose one of them. I made these 3 little flags. So the pattern paper for the flags is 1 by 1 1/2. And then I just cut my flag, and you've seen Tammy cut flags. You just basically take your scissors and you make a little snip up to where you want it to be. And then you just turn it to each to the side and snip and snip. And you just repeat that on both pieces. Okay, so I made 3 of those for this card. And then as I call it the thank you, the cardstock is 2 1/4 by 3. And the little thank you is 2 by 2 3/4. Okay, so now I just call this the assembly. We're just gonna put this all together. Now, I want to put my little flags here along the bottom. And the best way for me to do my lineup is I kind of decide ahead of time where I want things, where I want my flags to go. So on the original, I kind of had my flags here. And that's kind of what I'm doing on this one. I have some little lines here, so I just want to check my lines. So all I did was I just took my ruler and I went, I'm going to draw a line 1/2 inch up from the bottom on the back of the cardstock. And then I've just kind of laid out my flags and kind of decided where I wanted them to go. So let's turn it over. It's going to be easier if I have it turned over. And this time my flags are going to be the opposite direction from my first card because I wanted to show you something a little different. And all these little ticks do is with my little bit of OCD where I like things to always have the same space, if at all possible, it just helps me with that lineup. So I hope that makes sense. Hi, Wendy. So glad you're here. It's nice to see names I recognize. It doesn't make it so scary when you know the people. So I'm just going to line them up at the edge of my tick. And who knows, when I get this card turned over, they could be exactly the same as that one. I have been known to do that. I think I'm going one direction and it turns out to be something. And all I'm doing is and basically, I'll just do a quick measurement here. Maybe it's 3/8 of an inch between the flags. But again, that's your preference. That's the nice thing about making cards is these are yours. You make them the way you want them to be. Nobody says they have to be made in a certain way. But then I say that about albums too. So basically that's what we were looking for, is to have our flags, something like that. And then our thank you is kind of going to go on top of it like that. But because I like to pop things up, we are going to add some pop dots. And Tammy does have foam dots. I tend to call them pop dots. I don't know why. Maybe it's because that's what I learned to call them when I first started crafting. And yes, I often use more than I need. I don't want things falling apart. I don't worry so much about putting glue on the back of my pop dots, but I know some people do like to lay down glue first. Thanks, RJ. It's exactly, we need our safe spaces, right? And if you watch, this little pile is going to grow here because I had to move some things off my desk so that I'd have enough room for everything. Okay, and then believe it or not, I am going to eyeball this. So kind of probably about there. So it's not quite in the center, but just about. And then I'm just going to lay it down. And then all I did with the thank you is I just glued it on top. So I'm just going to run some glue just down the center. Just down the center of my little thank you banner. Thanks, Lucy. And then I'm just going to center it kind of in the middle of my flags, kind of in the middle of my work, the strip of paper, and sorry if my fingers are in the way. And if I'm happy once I kind of lift it up, which I kind of like that, there you go. Give it a good little burnish. And there you go, you've made your first card. So, and then if you want to bling it up some more, you could put some little enamel dots on it. You could put some little jewels on it. There's just so many things you could do. What size was the back under the thank you? One moment. So the size under the thank you is 2 1/4 by 3. And thank you, Miranda, for saying that, for adding that. Because remember, I had this slight little delay here. So there's card 1, and we've got it all finished. So we're going to move on to card 2. And again, I'll keep telling you, these are plain, simple cards. For the banner, so I'm meaning the strip of paper, Patty. And remember, I am going to be putting into the units tab the measurements that I have said already. So if it's this piece right here, the strip, The cardstock was 1 1/4 by 5. The pattern paper was 1 by 5. And I think I may have said 4, and that would be incorrect. I will fix that before it goes on there. Okay, so let's move on to our second card, which is this little cute one. And I really like the simplicity of it. So we're just going to set it aside up here so you can see what we're doing. I'll bring in my pieces for my second card. Take away my note. And then I'll just start by telling you that all the bases are the same size. So the cardstock is 5 1/4 by 4. The pattern paper mat is 5 by 3 3/4. Okay. Make sure I've got my card laying the right way. I have been known to put cards on backwards. And then excuse the pop dots or the foam dots because I put them on this one already. So the layering mat is 3 3/4. So 3 3/4. I'm just going to do it quick. Yes, by 2. And the piece of pattern paper is 3 1/2 because we're taking it down 1/4 by 1 3/4. See, this is why you always want to go through your measurements because you get to catch things like this. And see, that's why I didn't put them in the units tab yet, because I thought there might be some oopses. Anybody that knows me knows I can do oopses. And then this little thank you and the cardstock. So the cardstock itself is 1 1/2. So that was the circle I used. And the thank you I punched out with a 1 1/4 punch. So if you don't have these sizes, you can make it any size you want to. If you don't have a rectangle punch, or a circle punch, I should say, make it a rectangle, make it a square. You know, it would look lovely if it was a square or a rectangle with what else is going on this mat, on this card. So let's put adhesive on the back of our mat. And I do like to create my layers separately and then add them to the card. And you could pop up this unit or the base layering cardstock if you wanted to. That again is preference. I choose not to because it just makes them easier to mail, but sometimes I have layered. Give it a good burnish. Okay. And then like we did on this one, this little piece of pattern paper is going to go right about there. And I did pop it up. Hi, Linda. Doesn't matter if you're late. This is going to stay recorded. And as I've said before, in the Units tab, you will find a little PDF with the measurements of the pieces that I used for these cards. So I kind of centered it a little higher to the top. And then I just laid it down so it's further to the right than further to the left than it is to the right. And then with my little thank you, I only put a pop dot on one side of it because we're going to put just some glue over here. That is okay because I know it's hard to sometimes get this all written down. And because I feel like I'm talking quickly tonight, just because I said to Tammy, I'll only be an hour. I'll only be an hour. I wanted to make sure that I was an hour. So this one I have a little higher than on this card, but I'm okay with that. And then I created this little bow. So if you had that Ancestry collection, There was some beautiful, it's a sheer ribbon. It makes lovely bows. So I just made a small bow out of that. I am going to use some of the Nuvo Crystal Glaze to adhere my bow, just because I find it works better for me than the art glitter glue. Get my top back on this. So what I rounded the corners with, I actually use the 1/4 inch on the Crop-A-Dile corner chomper. That is what I used on here. You can round your corners. You don't need to round your corners. I'm going to show you one of my cards. I didn't round any corners. And then all I did is I just put that bow just under the circle that said thank you. I'm just going to hold it here for a second so that it will adhere. Sometimes I have to go back and do it twice just to, because if I don't hold it long enough. And there, we just finished card 2. And like I say, again, you could add some enamel dots to this card. You could do some Wink of Stella. You could put some glitter on it. There's just enamel dots. I may have said that. Little jewels. You know what would be really nice on here? Is, do you know the little faux brads that came with this collection? They would look so cute on these cards too, because not all of them say things that are directly related to your ancestry. And you know what? Maybe you want to give it as a thank you to one of your relatives. So I may have to come back and add that again with some glue, but that's okay. We're just going to set that one over here. Put this one up here. So we can move on to card 3. So card 3 has a couple of things going on. Just let me get my card 3. So it has a bigger square with some smaller squares on it. It has a scalloped circle and a regular circle. And then this little piece of ephemera came out of the bits and pieces. Don't quote me on that because I just dumped it all together. So I could be leading you astray. So I'm just going to set that card up here. And I'm going to remove my little sticker. And those of you that happen to get to the Friday night Zooms that Tammy puts on, you will all know that this piece of pattern paper is not my favorite piece of pattern paper, but it did grow on me the more I worked with the collection. And I really liked it when I was done creating this card. So we're just going to again put some adhesive on the back of that mat, which again, the cardstock measured 5 1/4 by 4. The pattern paper measured 5 by 3 3/4. And if you notice on this card, I did not round my corners. Now, actually, the reason I did not round my corners is because I forgot to as I was doing my matting. And then I went, you know what? I'm going to leave it because I think it's good to be able to see cards both ways. And then you can decide what your style is, what you like. So I'm going to get to my second page here. So then we'll talk about this layering piece that I created. So the brown cardstock measures 1/4 by 4. No, pardon me. Stop. Don't write that down. It measured 3 3/8 by 3 3/8. And then these 4 squares, these 4 smaller pattern paper squares, are 1 1/2 by 1 1/2. And all I did is and then I did these 2 corners. You can do it your way. works for you, howbeit I put it the right way so that my writing doesn't look like it's upside down. And even if it was, nobody would be the wiser by the time we get the decorative element on top of it. So I put some foam dots on the back of this already. And remember, you don't have to have the challenge finished to post the pictures. You just have to have started it. And so basically all I'm doing here is I'm keeping it to the top, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have whatever space I have on the left and right, have that same space on the top. So something like this, give or take. Yeah, I think I'm happy there. Okay. And then this element was recreated with, so I use this scallop circle, that's the 2-inch, and I use just the regular circle that the one was 1 3/4. So the scallop is in the cardstock in the 2-inch, the pattern paper is in the 1 3/4-inch circle. And again, if you don't have, you could put your sentiment right there, move this into the middle, and it would look lovely too. This again came out of the bits and pieces from the collection. And I'm using a thinner pop dot for this because I just didn't want it to have as much height. You could glue it on. You wouldn't even need to do pop dots. Thank you, Bobby, because that's the one thing. I don't have a clock handy when I'm doing this. So I'm trying to be really good with time. And you know what? This will give us a chance to have a potty break before we moved on to the next event. So I just centered it top to bottom, left to right. And I like to be able to see what I'm doing, so I often go and get a pair of tweezers. So something like that will make me happy, I think. And remember, this is about you, not about the next person. Everybody's got their own idea for what they want with their cards. And then all I did with this little sentiment, so what it is this cardstock was 3 by 1 and the little thank you piece. And just another note, what I did is I cut down a piece of 12 by 12 artisan to 8.5 by 11, and I ran that through my printer. So I actually have this on, the sentiments are on artisan cardstock. So there's just another thing I learned in this, that you can cut your artisan cardstock down. And yes, I have a bigger printer, so it can handle thicker paper. So you'd probably have to test that theory out on your own printer first to see if it actually would work. So there's another little tidbit for you. Now I'm just going to add some adhesive. And what I did with this is I sort of want to center it because it's a little bit smaller than this square that I created. So I want to center it side to side. And when I say top to bottom, I mean from the bottom of your piece above, so this element, to the top of your sentiment piece. Give it a good burnish. I did ink my edges with some brown sepia, and if you do follow me on my YouTube channel or on, my YouTube channel, I do like brown. It is the color I go to most of the time. So there was card 3, and look at people. I can live with this yellow when I only see this much of it. So there's our 3rd card. And then we're going to move on to our 4th card. And cards like this used to really intimidate me because I'd look at it and I'd go, there's a lot of things going on here. And then the more I thought about it, the more I went, no, there's not. It's just a bunch of squares. So there's the card that I'm working from. And this is my 2nd card. So I'll go through the measurements, and then we'll do the assembly. So again, our cardstock mat is 5 1/4 by 4. Our pattern paper mat is 5 by 3 3/4. So we'll just lay this down for just a second. And then there's some layering mats that are going on. So I'll talk about this one first. So this one is a 2 1/4 by 2 1/4 square. And the pattern paper is 2 by 2. So the cardstock is 2 1/4 by 2 1/4. The pattern paper is 2 by 2. Okay, so there's the one thing. And then these two smaller squares. So the cardstock for these are 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. The pattern paper is 1 1/2 by 1 1/2, and you need 2 of them. And then my sentiment layer is the cardstock is 2 by 2, and the thank you, I cut it out to be 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. Okay, so we'll start by assembling. We're going to add adhesive to the back of our mat. You guys are really quiet. I guess you're writing. At least that's what I'm going to think you are. Like so. And I'm just centering it like I did all the rest. Like so. Now, the next thing I did is I took my two smaller, so the two squares that measured, so the cardstock was 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. Pattern paper was 1 1/2 by 1 1/2. And I just kind of centered them so that they were now like triangles, or diamonds, I should say. And I just had them touching each other. So side to side, they're touching the edge of the cards, the pattern paper, and then they're just touching in the middle. So just to give you some idea of where I was placing them. So I'm just going to leave that one laying there for a second. And I wanted these layers to be flat, not popped up, because again, thinking about if we're going to mail these cards, we don't want them too thick, because at least here where I live, because I live in Canada, there is extra postage if your card is too thick. Debbie, yes, all of these measurements will be in the PDF that I am going to post. So I'm just kind of gauging. I'm going to be happy, and I am going to be happy. That's the nice thing about the art glitter glue, is it gives you a little time, wiggle room, as I call it. There's the one down. And now the second one. And again, I'll say, when you're doing something like this where you're turning the cards, so their pattern paper isn't going to be straight anymore, it really doesn't matter about direction. So something like that. Give it a good burnish. And then this piece of pattern paper, I've just got to read the comment here. So Debbie, oh, I'm so glad. Thank you. That, you know what? And this is what these cards are all about. It's to give us the confidence to go and try cards, because some people get really intimidated by cards, and they're not hard. This is not rocket science. That's why we want to keep them nice and simple for you guys, because we know if you want to take it to the next step, we all have stuff in our stash to do that. We just want to give you some basics to build that confidence. So on the layering mat that I created that was 2 1/4, so the cardstock is 2 1/4 by 2 1/4. Pattern paper is 2 by 2. I did put pop dots on the back of that. You are more than welcome, Patty. That's what this is all about. And you know what? You guys sending me the love, that's why we do this. That is exactly why we do this. Because if I can inspire one other person to decide to pick up some paper and create something, that's my whole goal. So I just made it into a little diamond by turning it. And then the thank you, it's just gonna go down on top of that diamond. So we're just gonna give it some glue. And I tried to keep my glue more to the center. I should have refilled this bottle, but I didn't. That's okay. And all I did was just sort of centering it in the middle of that diamond. And then giving it a good, whoops, don't move it because that's not what we want it. So you could have attached this before you did this diamond, but I find it's easier to kind of line it up when I do it this way. And there was card 4. So I'm just kind of going to lay out the cards. Oh, thanks, RJ. I'm so glad you like them. I want you to be able to see sort of, they're the same card, but they're different. So hopefully that needs to be glued down some more, but that's okay. And there's the last 2. So I made 8 cards. Each card is different, but I only used 4 different designs, if you want to put it that way. And I think you can see them all. So because I was so good, if anybody's got any questions, oh, Marcy, thank you. So glad you like them. If you got a question that you need answered right now, or like I say, if you're happy with where we ended this, I will say my goodbyes because I'll see you guys in a little while on Zoom. But like I say, this is all this was supposed to be. Use your scraps, make some cards. I thought thank you cards because we sometimes get that gift that we need to send a thank you card for. I thought, what a great way to start the year with some thank you cards. So glad you liked them, Lynette. So if there are no questions, what I will do is again tell you there will be a unit tab made for this project. That I believe is where you're going to post the pictures. I'm sure Tammy can say yes or no to that. And I believe that's where you post the pictures. And I will put in there in that unit the PDF for the thank yous and the PDF for the measurements, okay? So I'm going to say I will see you in a little while on Zoom. I'll see you in a little while on Zoom. Oh, thanks, Tammy. As long, like I say, I'm so glad that you guys have enjoyed these because I really liked making these because they were just so simple. And again, none of these cards are my original design. I went and looked on Pinterest and I saw some things I liked and I went, that's what I'm going to do. And then I pulled into my scraps and went, I'll use these scraps to make these cards. Okay? So we'll see you on the other side. We'll see you in Zoom. You guys have a good time. Bye.